Thank you, Kay, and welcome to New Literacies in Virtual Worlds. Yes, I'm Valerie in Virtual Worlds, and as she said, I have a K through 12 and through university background. And my research focus has been in virtual environments and also Minecraft for children. I'm going to be sharing how literacy has changed and how virtual worlds can be useful in teaching and learning from the perspective of a librarian. My current use includes a vision to expand beyond Second Life to the OpenSim grids to explore ways to archive virtual world content and to connect educational communities as real resources, just as print books were the main resources of the past. As I said, I'm currently the director of the Community Virtual Library. We have a main branch in Second Life, and librarians were early adopters of virtual worlds, and the Community Virtual Library has been going strong for over 12 years. I've been involved for most of that time. I have an amazing staff of professional librarians and volunteers at CVL, the Community Virtual Library. We're a project of new media arts, and we have partnerships with educational communities like ISTE and the American Library Association. We're grateful to virtual world champions like Selby Evans, many of you know, who help us to persevere in these learning environments. Now, initially, I was intrigued by the opportunities for creativity in Second Life. And I witnessed many colleges and many colleagues coming in world to recreate college campuses. But then after years of trial and error, the best practices for using virtual worlds began to emerge. And they're emerging now through collaboration, not in isolated campuses. Critical thinking and deep learning can take place in these immersive learning environments much better than in quick mobile apps because they're persistent and they are interactive. So, as I mentioned, for over 10 years, now if you're like me, you have been hearing all of that time that education has been disrupted by technology because of the rapid rise of mobile devices, tablets, iPads, and apps. Educators have been bombarded with innovation and new modes of teaching. And so it's no wonder that teachers can't keep up and they're unwilling or unable to invest the time to learn virtual world interfaces. But once the advantages are fully understood, I believe that that is going to change. The ability to create in a persistent environment is one huge advantage. Many online applications are what I call disposable media. Sure, students can create really cool things on mobile devices, but often then they simply toss it away. Scroll, delete, scroll, delete. Everywhere you look today, in our culture, you see people like this slide I'm showing right here. Everyone is on mobile devices. Grandmas and tiny tots are scrolling and swiping. Now, in my school library, the last couple of years that I was a school librarian, I suddenly found myself the school-wide iPad manager. It was nonstop troubleshooting iPads. Yes, literacy has changed. Books and pencils are no longer top dog. But with all of these new tools came the bombardment of information nonstop. And with that, we now have a personal responsibility. There's a prefix, meta, and you hear it all the time. Here we are in the metaverse, and it means about and beyond. That prefix has become applicable to literacy. We no longer think of literacy as reading and writing text primarily. When we think about new literacies, we have to consider nomenclature. And I'm used to changing nomenclature. The names, even for a librarian, have changed. We're often called teacher librarians, media specialists, or even research specialists. Metacognition, metamodernism, we're moving beyond postmodernism. The metaverse, metaliteracy. The American Library Association has used the term meta-literacy to describe the scope of skills needed in today's digital world. We not only locate and evaluate information, but we use it to produce new content in various formats, blogs, podcasts, videos, or mixed media applications. So it's everywhere. Meta-literacy. Meta, meta, meta. So bringing meta-literacy into the metaverse, that's the community virtual library. That's what we're striving to do. And what's the community virtual library do? What is a virtual world library? Well, it's real librarianship in a virtual world. And it's actually offering the same kinds of things that one would find in a physical world library. Programs, book discussions, poetry, writing and reading, workshops, conferences, exhibits and displays, and even historical role plays, and simulations that are too dangerous to try at home. Some of the things that have been exemplified here in this colloquium, we strive to connect and share with other educators. A virtual world library connects learners across distances to resources in all kinds of formats. So now what we're striving to do is expand beyond Second Life to the OpenSim grids. And why are we doing that? Well, when we think about virtual worlds in the future and how they're evolving, it's important to go beyond a proprietary platform, of course, and there are so many advantages that the open source worlds provide us, cost effectiveness for one. So what CVL is doing, we're striving to create a database of virtual world landmarks as well as communities so that educators and learners can find them. Great, then you're going to remember CVL for Community Virtual Library. It's your initials too. We believe that these educational communities, as I said, are real resources, and we need to curate them and catalog them so people can find them. In order for OpenSim to expand in the future, it's going to be imperative for people to find the high-quality simulations, to document them, and to archive them. Now, in addition to that, we've built a digital citizenship museum in Kitely, and we're soon going to have, in 2019, a Hypergrid resource station library in both Kitely and Avacon. And our leader of that project is Bethany Winslow. She's here today. The Community Virtual Library will put an emphasis on OpenSim throughout next year. Our virtual world database not only provides landmarks to high-quality immersive learning simulations, but also shares communities of interest by subject to help connect individuals to subject experts. And I'll put the link here in the text chat of how you can add your virtual world communities so people can find you and the colleagues that you work with on our database. It's also on our website, communityvirtuallibrary.org. Just look under projects. So digital citizenship has really become an important topic to me. It's really become my personal passion because as a literacy specialist, I realize it's one of the top challenges of literacy in digital culture. During my last year as a school librarian, I began to see this importance. Rivero, in an article, explains it this way. So the phrase digital citizenship has to do with the rights and duties of a person using technology along with other people, because a person must consider that he lives with others on an interconnected earth. And that happened quickly. It really changed literacy, and it changed the way that we relate to people. Meta-literacy can be challenging for all ages, even kindergartners who enter school more comfortable with a mouse than with a pencil. So CVL worked on the digital citizenship this past year, and it has 16 museum rooms with room to grow. And if it sounds interesting, you contact me later because we have a lot more room. We provide tours for people, an overview of many of the essential elements of digital citizenship, such as social media practices and blunders, even the rights and the responsibilities of avatars and artificial intelligence. So why do I think this is such a big deal, digital citizenship? Well, I took this photo on the slide here on the bus the other day. You probably see this everywhere too. Every single person on the bus was staring into a phone. I'm sure you see it. Everyone is elsewhere. And these digital spaces where everyone goes, certainly they provide great opportunities for learning, but there's also this constant distraction, self-absorption, and some go so far as to say addiction. Learning to balance our intake and our output of information with our physical world life, that is digital citizenship. So as a school librarian, I used to ask parents, at what age do you think students begin to create digital footprints? And most of the parents would say around 8 to 10 years old, or probably around the 4th grade. And these parents looked very surprised when I reminded them that they post baby pictures of their kids all the time. And often a digital citizen's photo is uploaded even before birth. Parents post sonogram pictures to announce if they're having a boy or a girl. We all live today in a digital world. So these tours that we're offering at our digital citizenship exhibit, they share resources for parents and teachers to help children learn about digital citizenship. And some of the other museum rooms include digital archival, respect for intellectual property, evaluating online content, privacy, and cybersecurity. Not only do students need to learn about digital citizenship, but everyone does. I'm currently working on a presentation about digital citizenship for senior citizens, and the goal is to help them relate to a generation who prefers texting to talking. And you can see on this next slide from the DQ Institute that there are many elements. It's a huge umbrella of elements in digital citizenship, including digital identity, digital rights, digital literacy, digital communication, digital emotional intelligence, digital security, digital safety, digital use, and digital identity. Many, many concepts fall under this huge umbrella. One expert that we have that comes in and speaks for us and has a museum room is on cybersecurity. He's spoken several times, and he shares in a cybersecurity museum room. Now, none of us can be experts on every one of these many topics. So when we curate this content, we can come into these rooms and learn from each other. The Cybersecurity Museum Room is a space to learn about the dark web, identifying threats, protecting data. Speakers like this expert, Eric Moore, who's an internet security expert, they're invited to share on these types of topics. We also have a digital literacy resource library there, and all of this is in Kitely. And it's right there in Kitely. It houses books, articles, even videos on various topics of digital citizenship and changing literacy needs. It's really difficult to locate all of these things when you go online, even if they're available, because you get so sidetracked. So our Digital Citizenship Museum could be used as a go-to space to dig deeper into all of these issues. And you can find this on our website under projects, communityvirtuallibrary.org. You can find more information about adding resources to our Digital Citizenship Museum. There's numerous books out there on topics that warn all of us about the perils of life in networked culture. And I just finished reading, I'm starting to read Thomas Kirsting's Disconnected, about how to reconnect our digitally distracted kids. And I just finished reading 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts Right Now by Jaron Lanier, the father of virtual reality. And, you read all these warnings, and Sherry Turkle, she also writes much about the problems that we face in digital culture. But I like to say there's no need to be frightened. We can collaborate and share the best practices for digital citizenship to help the next generation of learners. So virtual worlds can be a great place for learning because of the sense of presence that we have in virtual worlds. There are other spaces, and some of the other presenters have mentioned these online learning platforms that are great opportunities, but they don't have that sense of presence. iTunes U, Google Education, Blackboard, Canvas, even MOOCs and online webinars, you do not get that feeling of being there together that you get in an immersive virtual world. So a virtual world, when you enter it, there's something about it that is intentional, and you get the feeling, we've talked about that before, that it's real when you are with these real people. So I like to kind of think of it as intentional immersion versus default distraction, because much of the content we encounter on mobile devices is disposable. And our default setting on mobile devices is a state of distraction with constant notification bells going off. So a couple of points to ponder. Whether or not you have an avatar, we all live in virtual worlds. And this happened really fast, so within a decade. So we don't really know what that means and how to deal with it. Social media revolutionized the world very quickly, and most importantly, digital citizenship is now essential at all ages. I want to mention a few more of the projects that we have at the Community Virtual Library. In addition to the Digital Citizenship Museum in Kitely, we're working on a bibliography of articles on virtual worlds for education, and we'd like to add things that you might have on those topics. We collaborate with the Nonprofit Commons in Second Life. We recently renovated the Nonprofit Resource Library. There'll be a grand opening in Second Life on December 21st. And we're partnering with Shawnee Library for the Dickens Project this year with a resource center full of research projects and a Dickens Library for the Dickens Project. We network with Brant Knutson, who was here earlier at the conference, on the University of Hong Kong Venice 1600 project in Second Life for historical role play. And our current focus is the Hypergrid Resource Library, targeted to open in 2019, as I mentioned. Building on the work of others like Krista Lopez, who's here and going to be speaking after me, I know there are people who have really laid the groundwork for hypergrid jumping across these grids. And I'm certainly not an expert, and I realize that we have to work together to understand hypergridding and to help educators find and connect communities. Thurza Ember, Maria Korolov, to name a few people who have paved the way. Community Virtual Library plans to help individuals navigate across grids. Definitions of hypergrid jumping and all of the resources that we can collect for creating the various avatars and using various viewers. We want to gather them and put them in one place with portals that will make it easy for people to come and learn. And our theme is going to be a space station blasting off to other worlds. When I think about my predictions for virtual worlds, I believe it is important that we explore the open sim grids as we look to the future. And to merge or not to merge, I really hope we can keep virtual worlds and virtual reality headsets separate for the near future, but who really knows, what's going to happen? I think some colleagues believe that virtual reality and virtual worlds will one day merge into one thing. I wrote a blog post on that. I'll just put it here in case you want to look at it later. Personally, I sort of look at virtual worlds as a part of VR, but I think both of them are just rising and evolving, and it's hard to really understand exactly how they'll evolve in the future. Virtual reality may have great potential for specific experiences, particularly science experiences. But so far, it really lacks the interactivity and creativity of a virtual world where we can build ourselves without, having to learn a lot more coding. So for me, I think more studies need to be done on how virtual reality headsets impact young brains. Studies are showing that really young children, like 5-year-olds, cannot tell the difference between a virtual reality simulation in a headset and the physical world. I personally like the distance between my head and the screen. because as I learn best practices for balancing virtual and physical life, that's helpful for me. I think choosing experiences wisely, whether they're physical, virtual, or augmented, that's certainly going to be an important part of digital citizenship in the future. Most of what I have experienced on VR is killing zombies, and I really don't need to kill any more zombies. It just wastes my time. Some of the things that we've found for the future that are important is to embrace change, embrace collaboration, and archive, archive, archive. Archiving virtual world projects is a challenge that CVL is going to look at in the future. It's my hope that our Community Virtual Library Virtual World Database and Hypergrid Resource Center will help connect educators across the grids in OpenSim. And in order for the OpenSim learning environments to expand, the advantages really need to be illustrated. I've mentioned some advantages like the sense of presence and the cost effectiveness. I like to think, as Vygotsky says, we learn in collision with others, so that sense of presence is key. I think all of you will agree that presenting here with you today feels exactly like a real conference because, in fact, it is. And I believe one day these advantages are finally going to be realized by more professionals.